Well, hey, folks, welcome to the pre-show, which is all this is. It's a pre-show. Don't get excited yet. Nothing to shake a stick at. Nothing to write home about. It's the pre-show, where I'm just making sure I'm all set up. Have we got sound on this thing? This beast? Testing?
Did you bring in my purple Stitch backpack?
There's one in the garage on the right side as you go out the garage. It's up on top of the tubs. There's something else. There's a pillow or something in the back seat I didn't grab. There you go. Okay, we're going live in less than, well, almost exactly as of right now, this second, 2 minutes. We're going live on the radio station. And I just have to make sure everything's there. Boom, boom, boom. And I got my la 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 and that and that. And there we are. How about that? So I'm ready. I'm ready to roll. I appreciate it, Leslie. That means a lot to me and that everybody around here. So appreciate it very much. Let's see what time we got. It is 1:09:39. I'm going to go grab something, which I've got sitting over here. There we go. So we can get started. I got to do a little bit of self-promoting tonight. So, and I hope I had somebody criticize me once in the comments on my YouTube channel. Wow, you spent 12 minutes doing self-promotion. I said, yeah, it's my show. Duh. And I said, I also spent that particular night, that was before we were on Odyssey. And I said, yeah, I also spent an hour and 47 minutes on the topic I was talking about, too. So go ahead and balance that one out. I sat down to read Andy's book yesterday afternoon and couldn't put it down. What a great book. Thank you. Thank you. And that, of course, is Andy's story. And he fed me information. But I know Andy so well, it got to where when I was writing that book, I'll tell you more about that in a minute. We got to go dark because we're going live. Stand by.
The Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Well, that was weird. I clicked the start button to get the show going, and the whole thing collapsed, and it said, oops, something went wrong. So said the software. So I did a little bit of scrambling, but welcome to the program. I'm your host, Scotty Roberts. This is my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on Odyssey Radio. Not Odyssey, I'm sorry. Look at that. That's how scrambled it got me. I was looking at it. I saw Odyssey logos today on stuff. So now it's re-imprinted on my mind. Formerly with Odyssey Radio, formerly of Odyssey Radio, we are now subspace.radio, and we have been for some time. So there we go. I'm not sure why I blurted out Odyssey. I think, isn't that funny how the brain does stuff like that? I don't know. Maybe I'm going senile. Maybe I forgot somebody's name at a birthday while I was singing him a birthday song like Joe Biden did today. So anyway, there you go. I'm here. I can be heard. And we are here on, oh, it made me laugh. And I ran downstairs to read the part about the bully to Andy. Oh, Leslie's talking about the new book that is out. Let me grab it. I don't have it on my desk. If you have not seen this book yet or heard me talk about it, I've read a couple of little segments. This is the book that I wrote with Andy Dabbs. And this is his personal story. It's his memoirs. And Andy, my good friend of about 20 years, And he hired me to write the book for him. While it's his words, I added a lot of material to it. Those of you who know me well will be able to tell what came out of my mind to embellish what Andy has written about. And so this is the book. It's now available over on his website, Anton, just like you see it spelled at the top of the book right there, AntonDabs.com. You can go and find this book, and you can get, like Leslie did, the hardcover version of this book, which is really nice. It's the premium. It's got the photos inside are all color and things like that. And here is actually the very first illustration. This is a digital illustration that I did of Andy. So that's inside as the book starts right there. And so this book is available now, and you can get it in the hardcover version, color. You can get it in two soft covers, the color version and the black and white version. And of course, prices change with hardcover to softcover, color to black and white, and so on. So that's available. That's the book that Leslie is talking about right now. And she sat down and started reading it, she said, and the entire book yesterday, and read the entire book yesterday afternoon. It's a must read. Thank you for that, Leslie. And it's not a short book. It's text. We got 264 pages in this book. So you can, Leslie read through the whole book. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it. Leslie, let Andy know what you're thinking. I am live on radio. Why are you here? Do you need to ask me a question? It's got to wait until I'm off radio. That's the rules.
I'm just wondering. So,
it better be important. Here it is, folks. Is it important or is it not?
When we got home, I locked the garage door and now it's unlocked.
Okay. Mom is upstairs. She can help you with the garage door. I am on radio right now. I can't help you with the garage door, okay? All right. Was that a ghost story for me, by the way? No. Okay. I locked the garage door and now it's unlocked, she said. Well, there you go. So that's my children for you. That is that child in particular. The older two don't do it quite as much as they used to, but my 8-year-old, the undisputed queen of the universe, we just haven't caught on yet, Ellery, is it doesn't matter how many times I say I love it. And here's the hard part about it. I love it that my kids want to come and talk to me when I'm on the radio, and that they want to say, especially her, she wants to say hi to everybody. But it is a thing that has to be measured out very evenly. You can come in the pre-show. You can come in if I call you in. But you know what? You got to stay off when I start broadcasting. So there you go. Mom's yelling. You can probably hear that too. So somebody's got moms all in a bundle tonight. So Leslie says, just like Tam O'Hare and the Rise of the Nephilim, to name a few, Scotty has an exceptional way of telling a great story. Thank you, Leslie. I sure do appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Uncle Dave says hi to Ellery from the chat room. Ellery is now out of the chat room and she's upstairs. She just got yelled at for something. So, I don't want to. I hope this becomes very clear. We've always had a pretty casual way that we approach the radio program here, but I keep trying to get my kids to understand when I'm doing radio, that's not the best time to come in and ask me questions about meatloaf or a question about the garage door being locked or something. Save it. If mom has fallen and can't get up, come and get me while I'm on the radio. Otherwise, save it or go ask mom about it. And mom's about had it to hear today with kids. So as you could hear the yelling that's going on. Hey, Ed Odell, good to see you in the chat room. So everybody, that's what that was all about. I feel obligated to give a little bit of an explanation. So I love it when my kids come in, but the rule is don't come in when I'm on radio. Boom. I hope all you radio listeners are being able to hear that and enjoy that as well. So I did want to do a little shameless self-promoting. Leslie started it off. Remember Andy Dabbs' book that I wrote with him? You can find this book over on his website, AntonDabs.com. And this is the hardcover, the premium color version of the book. So you can go pick that up. AntoneDabs.com. The other one, because I've got them here for customers who bought them, of course, my older book, The Rollicking Adventures of Tam O'Hare. This is a book that I wrote and illustrated. If you're into the paranormal, you'll notice that it's got a foreword by Barry Fitzgerald, who is the Irish dude that is was the head of Ghost Hunters International, the head of that team, and he wrote a nice foreword to this book for me. But it's got all these beautiful color illustrations in this book. And so here you can see my, let's find a good picture to show you. There's 19 illustrations like this in the book. And so you can go pick that up. Just go to Tam O'Hare, T-A-M. There it is. Tam O'Hare. Don't put the apostrophe in. Just TamO'Hare.com. And you'll be able to find this book. And then one more, of course, my most recent illustrated book, right here, The Sword in the Clay. And this one's fully illustrated. It's about that long. It's meant to be a kid's book, but it's written to adults, so adults can read it, enjoy it, and make it understandable for their kids. And, of course, this book is filled with illustrations as well. And little ones, big ones like this one. Here you go. That is Will Byrd in World War I. So that just gives you an idea. The Sword in the Clay, you can pick that up at, guess where? TheSwordInTheClay.com. There's that book. And that's all I got. That's all I know about that. So there you go. 3 books that you can take a look at. Not heavy reading, most of them. Leslie bought The Sword in the Clay for me and my 9 grandchildren, meaning not she bought 1 book to share. She bought 10 books and passed them all out to her grandchildren. You have to sit down and read that one this week. I hope you'll enjoy that one. And I'm glad that you enjoyed Andy's book and my book with Andy. I will be very honest and say there's a lot of me in that book. But everything I wrote, I discussed with Andy, or I wrote it and said, okay, read this. You're going to like this. This is exactly what you want to say. And that's what we did. So let's move on from that. That's my shameless self-promotion for tonight. And look, it took us 12 minutes. Wow. And I got 3 things in 12 minutes. As my one critic said, I spent 12 minutes promoting stuff. So let's get into the meat of tonight. The first thing, if you saw the title for the show tonight, the exact title, as I wrote it down, is, because I can't remember it, the problem with being woke. It started out as why I am not woke. And there is a problem with wokeism in the country. And I want to set something very straight here. The idea behind being woke isn't a bad thing. It's kind of a smaller play on the word being awake. And we've talked about being awake before. And but the problem comes in that wokeism doesn't promote any action of any kind. It just promotes acting on something or spouting something, saying that you are now enlightened, and they're equating it with enlightenment, and it has really nothing to do with that. And I want to read you a little something, a long excerpt from a book before we really start getting into this, because there is a political element to wokeism, obviously. There is a non-bipartisan look at it. And I think there's ways to look at wokeism and accept it for what it is, while at the same time also accepting what it is not. And we're going to get into some of that. We may not hit that all tonight. So there's these 3 books that I've read, and I've talked about these before. And this is where I draw some material and where I want to start for tonight. I'm going to read you an excerpt from one of these books. The first one is the Jesus Mysteries. Was the original Jesus a pagan god? Was asked. And these are by men who grew up Christian. They're not slamming Christianity. Timothy Freak and Peter Gandy. Now, Timothy Freak, John Ward and I had him on our show, the Intrepid radio program, many years ago now, when he first came out with this book. And he also wrote, as a follow-up to that, Jesus and the Lost Goddess, the secret teachings of the original Christians, looking into Gnosticism and the mystery religions. Yeah, you're right, Leslie. Woke is a term created by the left to make the brain dead. Who lets media think for them? Feels smart. And yeah, exactly. But there isn't necessarily a huge negative bad thing about the origins of wokeism, which is a lot older than we might think. We're going to get into that, but it's not the wokeism we see today. And then the book I'm going to read a section to you from, because I think it will set the stage. And this is going to be a little bit of a series that we're going to hit whenever we can here over the next couple of weeks. But another book by Timothy Freak and Peter Gandy in their series, The Laughing Jesus, Religious Lies and Gnostic Wisdom. This is, all of these are amazing books, and I would recommend that you add them to your library. The Jesus Mysteries, Jesus and the Lost Goddess, and The Laughing Jesus. Now, I want to read a section for you to really start this out. And this is where I'm looking at being awake. Timothy Freak, F-R-E-K-E. If you look him up online, he's got The Deep Awake, he calls it, which is he's written 20 books on this, on being awake and being aware that you are awake, and how that's a very different thing than wokeism. And so I'm going to read the beginning of this to you, and hopefully unhindered by yelling children or anything like this. And this is right inside the beginning of this book. And it's chapter 1, and it's called Gnostic Spirituality and Literalist Religion. And then he's got a quote in here: "The letter kills, but the spirit brings to life." Paul wrote that in his letter to the Ephesians. And it starts like this. Now listen to these words. This is not me talking. This is me reading out of this book, The Laughing Jesus. And I want you to get some good thoughts out of this as a primer for what we're going to be doing here over this little mini series I'm doing. Goes like this. Wake up. Rouse yourself from the collective coma you mistake for real life. See through the illusion of separateness and recognize that we are all essentially one. Although we appear to be isolated individuals, in reality there is one awareness dreaming itself to be everywhere and everything. This is our shared essential nature. The simple secret to enjoying this dream we call life is to wake up to oneness. Because knowing that you're one with all, you're going to find yourself falling in love with all. You will fall in love with living. This is the message of the original Christians, who symbolized this awakened state with the enigmatic figure of the laughing Jesus. Have you ever seen a picture of Jesus laughing? There have been a few out there. Probably not. They're not very common. They become more common and nowadays, but have you ever seen a picture of the laughing Jesus? Throughout history, Gnostics have ceaselessly exposed literalist religion as a pernicious source of ignorance, division, and suffering. This Gnostic message has never been more relevant than today. The three great religions of the West, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, are on a collision course that threatens the security of the whole world. Taking religious myths literally is the root cause of the problems in the Middle East, which led to 9/11 and a host of other atrocities since. But there's nothing new about religious violence. The present conflict is just the continuation of a long and gruesome history of killing and dying for God. The burning of Christians by pagans as flaming torches to light their games. The brutal Christian revenge on the pagans. the relentless persecution of the Jews by Christians, the violent expansion of the Muslim Empire, and the bloody conquest of India, the barbaric crusades by Christians against the Muslims, the horrors of the Inquisition, the genocide of indigenous people in the New World in America, the mass burning of witches, all were motivated by the desire to please God, at least in the way these people saw themselves. All were justified with reference to sacred texts that not only condoned such behavior, but demanded it. We're watching one of the new prequel series to the series Yellowstone with Kevin Costner. And it's 1923, the one with Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren. And it's the same family tree, the roots to the current series, Yellowstone. And in this series, they are cutting away to several different storylines that they follow. One of the storylines is a Native American girl, along with many other Native American girls, in a Catholic school in 1923. The schools that were built out in the West, especially in the Southwest, to school Native American children from being Native American children, and the cruelty that was imposed on them. And it's an interesting storyline. You might want to take a look at that. All of these things were motivated by the desire to please God. And that's what made me think of that series, because the nuns who were beating these girls mercilessly for things and mistreating them were all, this is how you become saved. This is how you become born again, and so on. And that's not just made up for TV. This is the way those things happened. So all were justified with reference to sacred texts that not only condoned such behavior, but demanded it. These evils have not, let's see, I got to turn the page, but I can't turn it fast enough, have not occurred because the perpetrators were bad people, but because they were in a grip of very bad ideas. The baby in the bathwater, which is something I say many, many times. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but here's the baby in the bathwater. The time has come to say enough of this madness and consign literalist religion to the garbage can of history. But we must be careful not to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Religion isn't all bad. It has answered the profound human yearning to understand the mysteries of life and death. It's inspired people of all cultures to create sublime works of art, glorious cathedrals and temples, transcendent music and song. It has this power because at its heart is Gnostic spirituality. In this book, he's writing in this book that I'm reading from, in this book we want to rescue the teachings of Gnosis from under the accumulated debris of religious dogma, so that we can jettison outdated religious literalism, but retain and revivify the perennial wisdom of awakening. Let's stop blindly believing in old books and listen instead to those heretical voices that have been drowned out by the cacophony of literalist war cries. Just imagine for a moment that what Gnostics have been telling us throughout the ages is actually true. We appear to be separate, but essentially we are all one. The awareness that is conscious in you is the same awareness that's conscious in everyone. And if you recognize this, you'll find yourself in love with all. Imagine what would happen if we actually began to wake up and live by the Gnostic teachings of oneness and love. If we started to truly love our neighbors and even our enemies, because we recognize that they are actually expressions of our own deeper self. If we saw through to the reality that there are no Jews, Christians, or Muslims, that there is no us versus them. There is only us. This is the Gnostic vision that has inspired us to write this book, The Laughing Jesus. In part 1, the bathwater, we undertake a religious detox to flush the poison of literalism out of our system. We take a good hard look at the supposedly sacred scriptures of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam and demonstrate that these texts are far, far from divine. We show that they are not written or inspired by God, but created by men, and often by the worst kind of men. Politicians dressed up as priests. In part 2, the baby it's called in part 2, we bring ancient Gnostic teachings to life using modern language free from worn-out religious jargon. We give the timeless wisdom of awakening a makeover for the 21st century so that you can experience gnosis here and now. Gnosis, knowledge. As you read this book, we want you to get the joke and understand for yourself why the Gnostic Jesus laughs. That's the opening of this book, The Laughing Jesus. Religious Lies and Gnostic Wisdom. It's well worth reading. And I've dug through that book and all these books many times. But this is what I wanted to use as the introduction to why I am not woke. And believe me, not being woke almost begins with actually being awake. And that's why I read this. This is what awakeness brings you. It brings you the gnosis. It brings you the knowledge of who you can be and where you are and what the world and the universe are all about. And if you study, and I do not want to step on anybody's religious sensibilities, this whole series won't be religion for a long time. I just introduced it with that. I don't want to step on anybody's religious toes or your beliefs. But I got to tell you, for a truth, many of the things that we learn are the words written down by men. And if they are inspired by God, then God has a very human character, as you see throughout the writings in the Old Testament and the New Testament. So this is very interesting stuff. I want you to now listen as I start getting into the meat of this. And it's only 9:30, so we've got plenty of time. We got about 25 minutes to start this off. Leslie said in the chat room, if people would just live their lives by their conscience rather than religion or political parties, the world would be a much better place. Religion and politics is destroying humanity. I agree with you, Leslie. That's why when I had this discussion that was going on with somebody regarding the Biden papers and all that, they were obviously very anti-conservative. Immediately before she knew anything about me, she labeled me as a fucking maggot cult follower and kept this up through the whole thing, not bringing up really any cogent points. And I said, it's interesting to me. And she ended it all, this little back and forth. And I wasn't deeply entrenched into it. I didn't offer explanations for anything she said. I just said, well, if you go back and look at my original paragraph that I wrote, you'll realize that that's not at all what I said. And I would leave it there. Ball's in your court. Go reread what I wrote. Tell me that I did this or said that or implied that. Well, you're just a Trump cult leader and I'm done with you. I said, well, it's been nice talking to you. It's that kind of thing I'm talking about, the wokeness. She is probably somebody who considers herself woke, but she is so woke that she cannot see that she is not awake. That's what I want to talk about when talking about not being woke. And I've got a bunch of stuff that's way too much for tonight, but I want to get into it anyway. Maybe I'm looking at this psychologically, the promise and the problems of being woke. And I've got a lot of notes here and some quotes from articles. But many people are woke to society's challenges. But then this is where the problem comes in. And this is what I mean by saying being woke. If you go back to the earliest definitions of being woke, they weren't bad things. And I'm talking, these are things that have been with us for 30 years at this term, without it being the political movement. So there's nothing that's bad with saying, I am woke to this problem, or I am woke to this issue. And this is what I want to look at. It's undeniable that society has a long history of bigotry. Humanity has a long history of bigotry, sexism, racism, discrimination, homophobia in recent years, and all kinds of related ills. And so in humanity's checkered past, most people haven't been treated fairly, equally, or even humanely because they're different, or they believe different, or they think different, or they have different politics. There have always been certain groups of people who claim that they're superior to others by virtue of sex, religion, ethnicity, family name. Why, our family has sat in this pew in the church for 3 generations. How can you sit there? That's my family's pew. Superior to others. The perceived superiority by groups in power has frequently justified their maltreatment of other minority and other disempowered people. And it's easy to treat others as less than equal if you believe that they're inferior. When I talk with Ruben, and you've heard me talk about this in other series I've done on this program, the Native American had to be dehumanized in order to commit the atrocities against them. The black slaves, the slave movement, had to dehumanize people. What's the best way to dehumanize somebody? Shackle them and tell them and sell them, separate them from their families and sell them as a slave. That's dehumanizing enough. Native Americans, driving them off their land. It wasn't until the late, I want to say 1859 comes to my mind, 57 or 59. And the name of the man even escapes me. It's Standing Bear, I think was his name. In some place like Kansas or Oklahoma. I'm not sure. Maybe Steve knows. He's over in the chat room. And Steve, you said you shared some stuff on my Facebook and wondered what your take is on it. It's in a list of about 500 other things like that. But I saw the topic, and I do have some ideas on it. I'll write you tomorrow probably and let you know. So that's what I say. When I say I get videos, I get sometimes 100 videos a day. And everybody's like, hey, did you see it? What'd you think? I didn't get a chance to look at it. So Steve, no offense. I just haven't had a chance to look at it yet. But I did see the headline. So while frustration, righteous anger over all kinds of various types of discrimination, mistreatment has been around as long as civilization itself, it seems like things are coming to a head, at least in our society, in our culture, and around the world too. Just think back a couple years, the whole thing with George Floyd. It was, we may disagree with the ruling on that, but the court ruled that he was murdered by the police officer. And so we're seeing protests against racism, discrimination that come out of that. But not all of those things are good. Does wokeism promote burning 150 businesses of your neighbors? No, it doesn't. That is not awake. And that certainly is not woke. Oh, but you have to understand their rage. I do understand the rage of some people. And it isn't everybody in the black community or the communities that claim they are suppressed. It's not everybody thinks that way. Uncle Dave sends me about 5 to 50 videos a week. And so many times it's like, I scroll. And it's like every now and then one catches my eye and I watch it. So, sorry, Uncle Dave. There's a true confession. So, you see things like the craziness, the Confederate monuments and memorials all being torn down, left and right all across America. Streets and schools that were named after Confederate leaders are being changed. Statues and schools and institutions named after our founding fathers are being done away with because they owned slaves during a paradigm where everybody owned slaves. But remember, we were also one of the first nations to abolish it. Moving on. Across the globe, citizens in other countries are realizing their brutal histories. They're tearing down statues of dictators, despots, racist leaders. All of this is happening. I get that. And you know what? To me, tearing down a statue doesn't change history. It doesn't change a goddamn thing. What tearing down a statue does, it shows that you are a social justice warrior. I'm so awake, I'm going to destroy this monument. And there's a lot behind that statement that we'll get into. So just what do we mean when we say woke? Anyway, I bristle against it, but I wanted to make sure I understood it. There's many people, especially younger people nowadays, who believe that they have this heightened awareness of our troubled past. And because they have this perception of our troubled past, only from one myopic point of view, they understandably think that they need to go out and try to correct what they believe are our collective wrongs. This is where the term woke started getting a lot of airtime. It's defined as being aware and actively attentive to important facts and issues, especially issues of racial and social justice. That is a modern definition of woke. Now, if you would have said 200 years ago, I woke at dawn this morning, totally different meaning. So that's a modern definition that has been influenced by politics. And given that we have a long history of all these injustices, it seems like being woke to such problems could be a good thing on its surface, if you don't think about it. So how can we address such problems without first being aware of them? Movements such as Black Lives Matters. Original people were bamboozled into believing that at heart they were about correcting racism and injustice that have long been ignored or swept under the rug, but it began with lies as well. And then you see all the financial stuff going on with the people who founded that group. It's not so much a woke organization. What we need is to wake up. We don't need to be woke. We need to awaken. What I read in this book, awaken. He was talking in a religious context when I read out of his book, awaken to the literalist church, he said, the literalist religion, and go into something that is more Gnostic, more gnosis, more having knowledge. So, wow, there must be people who either do not like this topic because where we're usually at quite a much higher number for live people in the chat room, we dropped down to under 10 just in the last 10 minutes. So people either disagree, don't like it, or they don't want to be here because we're talking about, oh my God, he's hitting a political topic. It's less political than you think. Political is how we recognize it. It's not what it is. So when wokeism creates a wake, is what I want to present to you here. Perhaps the long overdue correction of wokeism is sometimes leading to an overcorrection of sorts, an overcorrection of sorts. And this can happen when people who are woke call out or cancel those who they perceive to not be woke or woke enough. Canceling sometimes occurs when one person says or does something to which others who are awoke object. And then that person gets roundly shamed and criticized, usually on social media, which is the place that you can criticize anybody, like this person who was trying to take me to task over talking about the Biden papers and not being a cult follower. That person, you know why they quit talking? They ran out of steam. They could see they weren't getting me rattled. I did say to that person, I said, you're calling me all these nasty things. I said, why don't you look back at the tone of this conversation? Compare the way you were talking to me, laced with nastiness, name calling, laced with ad hominem, and all of this kind of stuff. I said, then look at what I was talking about. I said, I basically recited facts, and I was a decent person. And I said, there is where you are going to find a difference between awake and woke, I believe. Awake being awake. And I struggle with that sometimes because I say saying you're awake is like saying you've got humility. Once you say it, you've got it, you've lost it. But I think it's more than that. You can say you're awake. It was actually Timothy Freak who wrote these books when he was on radio with John Ward and I, and that would have had to have been in 2014-ish, 15. We went 3.5 years with that show. And he said, well, Scotty, he says, Timothy Freak, who's from England, he says, what you're saying has me saying, you feel this way because you're becoming awake. This is what he promotes. But this is not what you see with wokeism. When you ruin somebody's reputation, when you cancel culture somebody, when you dox them and all of that, by the woke crowd, is that really truly being woke, being awake? I would say, yes, it's being woke in the political sense. Is that being awake? No. Because when you are awake, you make room for people that you disagree with. So many times people's reputations are ruined, and he or she might not ever be able to recover from being canceled. I had my friend who was accused of rape who did not do it. He was acquitted of that, and it was found to be false. Took 4 years to get there. But the whole community that knew him all lashed out against him because they were all woke. And it was his original charges were thrown out at him during the whole time of the Kavanaugh hearings. Remember that, the Me Tooism and all of that. So he was bandwagoned as far as I could see. So even President Obama, for as much as I disagree with his politics and his ideologies, I think he's a good man at heart. I think he's got good ideas. I also think he probably knows where his ideas aren't as good as he likes to paint them, just like politicians. But in 2019, in an interview for the Obama Foundation on youth activism, President Obama expressed this about wokeism and the call-out cancel culture that's emerging. He said this, quote from Obama, in 2019, a mere 4 years ago. This idea of purity and you're never compromised and you're always politically woke and all that stuff, you should get over that quickly, Obama said. The world is messy. There are ambiguities. People who do really good stuff have flaws. People who you are fighting may love their kids and share certain things with you and ideas with you. That was, even Obama said that. Well, culture says you got to give that up. It's not working. Uncle Dave says in the chat room, why is it all these woke individuals always seem so hateful? I've chosen a path to enlightenment and I'm not there yet, but I choose to deal with life by living from a place of love. Yeah. And Dave, you know what you need? That you need a wife and 3 kids at home while you're trying to paint or while you're trying to do your stuff. That will challenge your enlightenment. Leslie Holker said, Rush Limbaugh read his book, Dreams of My Father, Obama's book. Obama was raised by communists and he's an anti-American and capitalism. Yeah, he is. But he's doing pretty well for being anti-American and anti-capitalism, isn't he? So, so the idea here is go to the definitions of woke and be mindful and compassionate as well, because the original thought of being woke was more attuned to being awake than you might think. And when I say awake, that's a spiritual enlightenment. That's an issue of where you know something, and you know something is different than what you were told or taught. And I could call up I'm not going to call up the definition. That's basically what it is. You know something and you realize you were sleeping amongst a multitude of sleepers. People in this world are sleeping. They're living in the dream of what they think is real living, and they're not. Enlightenment is something you can, it's like I said in that ad for Tam O'Hare that was on the, I wonder if I've got it on, hang on a second. I got to see if it's on this magazine. Yes, it is. So, that picks up in here, Rainey. So, on the back of this magazine, here's an old issue of Intrepid magazine when we were publishing a few years ago. And on the back cover, I have this ad that my son Sam, when I wrote the first edition of The Rollicking Adventures of Tam O'Hare, I had him pose for this to do. And he's got that sword in his hand, and he's got the book. He's fallen asleep, and the dog is sleeping by him. And I say this: honor is the gift a creature can only give himself. Being awake is the gift only you can give yourself. Nobody can give it to you, as with honor. And that's what I mean by this. Being awake is something you have to gift yourself with. And it's not as hard as you might think. So let me get back to where I was in my notes here. The promise and problems of being awake. So no one wants wokeism to be the road to hell paved with good intentions. But many of us see it as just that. You can be awake to racism and injustice among our fellow humans, and you can love them and care for them and tolerate them without being woke. And there is a basic problem with woke, and I'll get to that if we get through this material. So nobody wants wokeism to be the road to hell that's paved with good intentions. We have to proceed with this kind of stuff mindfully so that wokeism doesn't have unintended consequences. And I bristle even when I say that because I am so anti-wokeism. But at the same time, if I am anti-wokeism, I still have to try to understand where those people are coming from. Number one, no matter what one's religious persuasion is, there are deep words in the wisdom of Jesus. When before a woman was to be stoned to death for the accusation of adultery, he said, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." Can you think of something you've said or done in the past that was stupid, ignorant, mean-spirited, demeaning, callous, insensitive, perhaps even racist, sexist, etc.? If you can't think of one thing, well, either you're in denial or you have a horrible memory, or you're Jesus. Give him back his sandals. You're not Jesus. So let's face it, we all have done these things. What if you have a bad moment and you said or did something that was biased out on social media, or caught on video? Even more troublesome, what if this thing you did or said was totally taken out of context and not representative at all of what your true feelings or views might be? Can you imagine how horrible that would feel to be tried and convicted as a racist or worse by one thing you've done or said? That's what happens in wokeism. That's what happens in cancel culture. Hey, real paranormal. Preach, Brother Scotty. I agree 100%. Thank you, sir. Number 2, who we are is not the mistakes that we've made. How many of you have made mistakes in your life? Show of hands. How many of you want to be defined by your mistakes? You are not the mistakes that you've made. If someone calls another person a racist, sticking with the theme of wokeism, the person is being put into a category. You're immediately categorizing that person. The problem is that we can't change an identity. However, we can change behavior. And usually, by the way, a person who decries somebody as being racist for some dumb thing they said or some stupid blackface makeup they wore at a party 30 years ago or whatever it might be, those are the racists. If you see race, what we're supposed to be colorblind, right? We're not supposed to see race. But if you see race, you're woke. If you're decrying somebody that you believe is offending somebody who is out of their racism, and you've created an identity for a person that might not exist at all. There's a big difference between saying to oneself, I'm an idiot, when we've made mistakes, versus that was a stupid thing that I did. We can learn from doing stupid things. Do you know that? The world is filled with stupid decisions made by good people who correct themselves after doing this stupid thing. We can learn and we can change our behavior. But if we label ourselves an idiot, how are we supposed to change that? Labeling a person a racist or a sexist or whatever doesn't leave a door open for change. The label becomes a prison from which escape is impossible. That's why you see people getting cancel cultured. And if they're not smart enough about the way they deal with it, they disappear. We only got 3 minutes left. Sheesh. I got so much more stuff here. That's only 2 of the 9 things to start. On a related note, labeling somebody as racist doesn't inform the person in question that what they did was offensive. Why it was offensive. What to do to change their behavior. Likewise, if a person gets canceled for a perceived transgression, how can somebody seek redemption or restitution when their status is canceled? It's dumb. Apologizing gets to be awfully dumb in these cases. Calling someone a racist or similar name is often in itself offensive all by itself. The recipient of such a label is unlikely to hear or respond favorably to anything you say or do because, in effect, they were just punched in the face, and they'll likely react with hurt or anger or resentment or hostility or common sense and just say, fuck off. So, so short of time. That clock. I can't even get into the next point because I'll run out of time. I got less than a minute and I got to be out of here. For the radio audience, we can talk about some of these things in the captain's cabin a little bit, but not much. I'm going to do a long captain's cabin tonight. I had a 2-hour show this morning, and I'm about burned out for the day. But we'll launch it and we'll get it going. So all of you out there who are listening to this show by radio, oh, wait a minute. I got 4 minutes left. I got a clock. It throws me off because the clock is different than the timer. So we have actually 3 minutes left before we have to get out of here. That gives me time to hit this next point, which is point number 4. Let me find my notes here. They're in a different program, so I got to call it back up. There it is. No, this is number 5. The fear of being called out or canceled can restrict free speech. It restricts honest opinions and differences of opinion. I had somebody trying to cancel me the other day, and it's like, shut up. It doesn't work. I'm impervious to your canceling. and your wokeness. If somebody thought a particular social policy advocated by a woke group wasn't going to be particularly effective at achieving the desired ends, he might be afraid to voice his concerns about the policy for fear of being called out or canceled by the woke group. I mentioned my friend who was accused of rape. I know people who originally came out and stood with him, who stuck their wetted finger in the air and said, "Oh, my groupies and my friends, Uncle Dave, you know who I'm talking about. You may not know the person, the place, the Renaissance Festival, and all the people there. There were people that stood with my friend, but they were like, don't tell anybody. If the group as a whole knows that about me, I'll get canceled." And I'm like, fucking grow a little backbone. That doesn't work for me. So when it rises high enough, woke activists might become, in effect, the thought police. Where we heard that before. At this point, wokeism might start to represent McCarthyism or some type of a Orwellian future in which the freedom of expression becomes severely restricted. Look at social media. Why can't you say anything? Why can't you talk about certain kinds of shots? Because you'll be labeled as going against the narrative and you'll be cut off at the knees. Why can't you talk about certain things? Because it's not allowed. Companies, these Silicon Valley companies that founded their companies in this country based on constitutional freedoms to do what they're doing. Guess what? They're okay with denying you your constitutional freedoms if it doesn't fit their narrative. And that's a big problem. So now, we're just about at the end for the radio audience over on subspace.radio. We're going to get out of here in less than a minute. Now we've reached the end of this show. So you know what I want you to do? I want you to join us in the captain's cabin right over here on the YouTube channel. We'll just stay live and we'll keep going. In the meantime, live long and prosper to my radio audience.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
And boom, just like that. With the captain's cabin. Welcome back, everybody. Glad to have you here. Glad that you stuck around. We're not going to be here very long tonight, and I mean that. I mean that. So maybe 10 minutes at the most, because I want to be done for today. Not because it's a problem for me. There is a perception in my house, though, that I do an awful lot of radio, and it doesn't put bacon on the table. So, and that's not the sole reason. It's just spending time at it. And I love doing Kenny's show. I think I'm going to help him out tomorrow morning. I do believe. And I hope that he is back with us by Wednesday. If you listen to the morning show that I've been filling in for Kenny Ballos, KB, Morning Coffee with KB. And it should be about an hour that I do that. And I get into conversations and talking with people. And guess what? It goes an hour and a half some days, sometimes 2 hours, from 8:30 to 10:30 in the morning over here. So if you ever catch that, and I don't do it here from the studio, which I might do tomorrow. I might do it from inside the studio tomorrow. So it'll have a little different look. I usually do it on the phone, and I'm outside in the garage with the weather behind me. We're going to probably change that up and do it inside this morning. I won't come in then, says Sarah. Sarah, you can come in, but only for a couple of minutes. So come on in. I don't want to discourage you from coming in at all. Just know that I'm not going to go very long tonight. That's all, at all. I'm going to go very short tonight. And hey, I want those books signed copies. You can get them, Elderberry. You can get them. Didn't you buy some books already? Did I send you signed books? Hey, I want those books signed copies. Yeah, you can get them. Every one of my books, I'll sign them. But you got to go get them first. Go to theswordintheclay.com. You can also go to tamohair.com. And I've got, frankly, you know what? I've got some of these are for other people that they ordered them. But I've got one copy of The Rollicking Adventures of Tam O'Hare. And it's all, like I said earlier, it's all color illustrations throughout the whole book. And if you don't know what it's about, Tam O'Hare is about real history. Takes place in the reigns of Elizabeth I of England and also Mary Queen of Scots. And Tam is an Irish lord. So you can, and it's all told with animals. So if you want the book, you can get it. I got one here, and I got one copy that is not earmarked for anybody of The Sword and the Clay sitting here. Otherwise, I've got to put them on order with the publisher. So there you go. So if you want either of those, Elderberry, just go to the websites and you can take it from there. And hi to Sarah Youssef. How you doing, Sarah?
Scotty. I'm finally feeling a little better.
It's about time.
Yeah.
There's been
laryngitis.
You, Dave Potter, Kenny Ballos, surrounded by people. Wendy Robertson, surrounded by people who have had some stuff going on like that. And all parts of the globe.
Yeah.
So.
And I also have to remember to say happy birthday to Wendy.
Mm-hmm. It is now her birthday is over, at least in her time zone, because it's like 4 a.m. over there. So, Elderberry, send me your email address, and I'll send you a bill. So,
yeah, I just wanted to talk about one thing about wokeism, or because after you read that long passage from
the Laughing Jesus,
right?
By
and because throughout the show, I think you're talking about several different things and kind of putting it all together, but at least from
connecting dots.
Well, yeah, it's like stars in the sky. Ideas are like stars in the sky. So, with that, his interpretation, from what I gathered, from the excerpt that you were talking about, that he's trying to encourage alternative ways of thinking rather than take it just from the literal, that, to think out of the box, or then what's in front of you. And a lot of people are guilty of this, especially, with the news
Sure we are.
media now, is that, we don't look into things ourselves. We just take what people say at face value and assume that they did their homework, so we don't have to put the effort in and do our own homework. It's sort of
Right.
like a sort of social laziness, or
Yes.
or in such ways. Because even if you want to, continue with the Jesus example, why yes, what we know of Jesus in the Bible is always, from a third person type. They're trying to interpret what was actually going on in front of them, or in the way that they not portrayed, but I mean that they say the way Jesus spoke was always in types of parables. It wasn't it was like, where you're supposed to
sometimes
figure
he
out.
spoke in parables.
Yeah, that we were supposed to kind of figure out what he meant by that, or
What do you mean by that? The disciples walked around most of the time going, what?
Right. And that sort of, plays into that sort of not anonymity, but I mean that not literal. What's the word I'm looking for? You have to you'll have to scan my brain and the not indirectness of what was actually said, is because it's not like Jesus, okay, I want you to do A, B, and C, and this is what Christianity is going to be.
Okay.
But or when we look at religious books, when we can because their vagueness, we can apply them to current life, or we can take comfort from that, or from reading passages, we receive certain types of energies, or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
Or whatever you want to call it, that that many people take comfort in, or it changes their mindset in a certain way, tweaks it a bit to think different, and of course it's all about thinking differently.
Yeah.
So
and of course we look at those teachings of Jesus, and in order to place the social context on them, we have to overlook the theological context, because there was certainly a theological side of Jesus, a meaty theological side to him, and all of his parables and his teachings and his lessons about life, and, if you will, extrapolating back to that time, a word that we use today, social issues. They were all housed in, this is where God wants you to be spiritually. And there was a theology behind it. So what we have to do then is say, do we look to Jesus to being somebody who was very different than he was presented in the New Testament? Or do we look to him to be, there was a theological message that he had, along with a social message. Jesus, I think it would be a mistake if we were to look at Jesus and say his ministry was about social issues. No, I think social issues came up because, like an old pastor of mine used to say when I was a kid, he said, you can't preach the gospel to people who have an empty stomach.
Right.
And so he was trying to teach truths, but at the same time he was healing, and he wasn't out feeding people. He wanted to make sure his disciples were fed. But I don't think you can find anywhere in Scripture where there was only one miraculous event where he fed people. And that was to make a point. He was making a point, and he was showing his power. That's what the purpose of the story was. Whether it really happened or not, I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
It would have to have been a miracle.
Yeah.
So
yeah, most of these I don't want to call them stories, but I mean not tales, but or even mythos, because that seems to meaning. But the way these things are said, they're not. It said yes. There's these figures that tell us how to live. I mean, of course, there's going to be some social issue aspect. That's part of living life. Everybody has to deal with social issues. It's part of that, human experience and how we relate to, those texts and books and accounts is through our humanism, how we, how we see ourselves in.
That's our filter.
Yeah.
So your filter can be a theological one. It can be a social one. It can be so.
I mean, it's all.
Oh, Uncle Dave is hanging in the wings here. I'm going to bring him in too. Keep going, Sarah.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, it's all encompassing, but, and even in, most majority of the major texts, they're encouraging at least a certain amount of self-reliance, like not to rely religion on everything. I mean, it's the guiding principle, but it's not, the car. I mean, it's like, okay, we have the destination, you're putting it in your GPS on how to live your life, and then you go. So, I mean,
yes,
whether you're going, by whatever means, but I mean, and I think that, we are due for a major psychological, mental, spiritual, that everybody was talking about, a couple of years ago about turning into the age of Aquarius, the new age of enlightenment. Even in the biblical text, there's, those end of day scenarios. They talk about the great revelation, the great unveiling of whether it's knowledge
the
or
big reveal.
The big
according
reveal.
to John.
Right. The big reveal. So it's sort of, saying that there is, a layer of, esoteric things that are, hidden that will eventually be revealed, and how things, we explore our world and how we reveal this through the changing of mindset. Right. I mean, it's how we explore through logic and reason, or even trying to go beyond logic and reason. You enter into the metaphysical space. Or, we tend to think of things as, being scientific or not. And it's like, it goes back to, what was it? Descartes. I think it was Descartes who, put a difference, or not necessarily a barrier between science and logic versus, the esoteric, metaphysical, emotional feeling that, eventually I think the two will come back together, as opposed to being so separate, because there's only so far you can go with logic.
I hope so.
Yeah, because there's only so far you can go with logic. I mean, and there's so much more out there, and it's like different philosophers and scientists, they're all to come with their own form of unified field theory. They're trying to put everything together, whether that the distance or imagined distance between us and God, is God somewhere in the sky? Is God within us? Is it something that's omnipresent, interlaced with every atom of our being? There's different theories and different ways to we express ourselves. So it's an exploration, and essentially all that's going to basically come down to what we consider as true, and what we're going to consider as true is going to be based on our resonance, right? Whatever feels good or feels correct, or that gut feeling. So, I mean, in that case, is there no such thing as truth, or what's right, or So
Pilate asked Jesus, "What is truth?
What is truth? What is correct? What is So, I mean, it's all subjective. So
see, now I'm glad you called in, because you added a lot to the thinking here, and we're not going to go very long. If you're trying to get people to call in to keep me on, it ain't going to work tonight, because I got to get off early tonight. So,
hi, Uncle Dave.
Trying.
Hi, how are you? Hey, you had a great show this morning, Scotty.
Hey, thanks, Uncle Dave.
I just sat and listened all morning.
That was a good guy that was on this morning, Kim.
Yeah.
I want to try to get him on this show, so talk about his stuff. Emmy Award-winning actor.
Yeah.
So, very nice stuff.
I know KB sent me a text to call in, but I was like, nope, I'm good. I'm just laying here in bed listening.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Now you're just sitting there listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to do KB's show tomorrow. Hopefully that will be the last time before he is back. I hope he is. He doesn't sound like he's
You
getting
need to drink
better.
some rum. KB, if you're still on and listening, drink some rum or some scotch to numb your throat. So when I used to play Captain Morgan all the time, my throat would get real raspy because talking like this all day for 12 hours really ravages your vocal cords. The rum numbs the vocal cords so that you can speak properly.
But that's just a patch to the issue.
I know it's just a patch, but sometimes you have to use that patch to get through it.
I think it helps. It numbs it and it keeps it numb so you're not hurting it. I guess that's the theory behind it. Or it's one of the theories to drink rum.
It freaking works. That's all I know.
There you go.
If he's having lung issues, you would think it would be the smoking.
Yeah.
But
he's
laryngitis isn't a lung thing. Laryngitis is a vocal cord issue.
His vocal cords are messed up. He had some kind of, he told me what his doctors said. Some kind of I don't even know what causes laryngitis. I can't remember what
inflammation. It's inflammation.
But they put him on steroids for it.
Yeah, so he's pretty bad if they're bored.
Yeah, he was rough last week. He couldn't even whisper last week. So
everybody send thoughts and prayers. So
yeah, definitely. For KB, we hope to see him back in the saddle this week. So,
me, I'm on the mend. Feel good today. Still a little raspy in the throat. I should drink some rum.
There you go. Drink some rum, Dave.
I don't have any here at the house. I live in a dry house.
Oh.
So.
Well. Yeah. Afraid your parents are going to raid the liquor cabinet if you put rum up there?
I respect their wishes.
There you go. Well, there it is. Then there's
the way I was brought
no
up.
more to say.
I have
your parents don't like you drinking rum?
They don't drink at all. They're total teetotalers.
Okay.
Now my grandmother used to keep old granddad under the kitchen sink.
There you go. That's like I don't smoke in my house because my wife doesn't like it in the house.
And my grandmother told my sister-in-law one time.
Like smoke.
My grandmother told my sister-in-law one time, shortly after she married my brothers, sometimes after a rough day, you need a little bump.
That's it. That's it. So sometimes on a good day, you need a little bump.
Yep.
So
sounds like a slippery slope.
It could be.
Never for me. Drank for years. I don't have any form of it. I don't have that addictive gene turned on, and I can go years without it or months without it. And, I mostly drink socially, but the motorhome is well stocked. I could go out there and have a glass of whiskey or a glass of rum or something. But
I remember telling an old pastor friend of mine way back, we were talking and I was thinking, there were some things I was thinking of doing. And somehow my habits and things came up. And he said, do you think you have any addictions to anything? I said, nope. I said, I know I don't. I wasn't even smoking back then. This is pre-40 years old. And I said, well, wait. I said, I have two addictions. I said, naked women and pastries. And he says, well, he says, see what you can do about those. I said, I do every day. So
that's the downside about being a minister. Every Sunday morning they bring you pastries.
That's right.
And if you're Catholic, you get naked women. So
that's it. There it is. So anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I'm calling it. All right. Day.
You give those cherubs a hug for me and your wife too.
I will. I hope I don't come across too harsh on my children on air here.
No, I get it.
You can't.
I know how you are with your kids.
When you're broadcasting to a bunch of people.
I know how much you love your kids.
Oh,
you seldom beat them in public, so that's
seldom in public.
And, Sarah, give yourself a hug for me.
Well, yeah, I'll call you in a bit. So.
Oh.
All right, there you go. Let me not get in the way. All right, you two. Have a good night. Sarah, thanks for being here.
All right. Thanks.
Good to see you. Uncle Dave, good to see you. See you, brother. We'll talk soon. All right. And all the rest of yous, we're going to get out of here because I got to get out of here. I saw Professor Bauer in the room, and I'm glad he didn't try to come in because I would have told him, I'll bring you in for a minute and then I got to let you go because I'm done. I'm baked for the day. Not baked in the good way either. So all of you, have a good night. Join me tomorrow morning. I'll be filling in for Kenny Ballos again tomorrow. 8:30 a.m. Central. It's going to be on Facebook. So watch for my Facebook Live. And that's all I got to say about that. And I love doing this for Kenny, but I do want him to get better too. He needs to be back and he needs to be feeling better. So all of you, have a good night. And I'm going to send you out with the new, I've got to tweak this a little bit, but here's the new trailer, or not trailer, the opener for The Captain's Cabin. So live long and prosper.